Hi, everyone. My name is Jordana Barrack, and I am the Executive Director of the Mighty Arrow Family Foundation. I do want to say thank you to Casey for thinking of us and inviting us to come speak to you guys today. I also want to call out my coworker, Nathan Fay, who's online right now. Nathan sits on the board of Water Education Colorado, which is engaged in this conference, and he also roped me into this. So it's pretty fun to be here. He couldn't be with us today, but I just wanted to make sure to point out that he's online with us. So again, I'm the director of the Mighty Arrow Family Foundation. Mighty Arrow is the philanthropic private family foundation of the family that started New Belgium Brewing Company. Our foundation is not part of New Belgium, but I do say we're New Belgium adjacent because we can get free beer from them when we need, which is always a good bonus. But anyway, this family, at the end of 2012, they sold their shares in New Belgium and the company to the employee ESOP, and they used that money to go start this family foundation. And Mighty Arrow, we work on, so we're about 12 years old now. We work on climate solutions, land and water stewardship, regenerative agriculture, and social justice. And those are our four main focus areas, but each of those has its own sub-strategies within there. We do that both through grant making and through impact investing. We're a smaller foundation, and so we're not going to be able to come in and underwrite an entire program for an organization. And so because of that, we look for smaller organizations and younger organizations where our dollars have the greatest impact. We do like to sign up for multi-year commitments, which is very rewarding for us because we go deeper into our relationships with those partners. We do general operating support. And again, the beauty of working with these younger organizations is that we've kind of been with them as a lot of them have been through their own journey of maturing as an organization, whether they've started as a fiscally sponsored project and moved into being their own 501c3, or they've turned 10 years old and they've been through a evolution of board governance and a few different factors that kind of either made or broke them as they moved into what their futures would look like. Mighty Arrow is also a sunsetting foundation. If you haven't heard of that before, it means that our founder, Kim, she wants to give it all away, and she wants to give it all away by the year 2040. So we're not going to be around forever, but we are going to be around for a little while. So we really try to ask the question of how do we have the greatest impact while we're here? And I think honestly, that's kind of led us to why we dive a little deeper into organizational health with our partners. Um, so a little bit about me. I entered the picture 12 years ago as New Belgium's corporate secretary and assisted Kim Jordan with her personal family office. And during that time, I spent 8 of those years sitting in New Belgium's board of directors room, facilitating and organizing that group of people. And I learned a lot through that. We went through some pretty difficult things as a company, as all companies and businesses do over their lifetime. We wrestled with layoffs at one point in time, with sales and business, and then eventually we had to capitalize the company, which means we had to go sell it. Those are not easy conversations to have as a board, but those are important conversations to be able to lean into and work through as a company and as a board leadership group. And I would say that we certainly came out the other side with a win. And we had to fight to get to that, but New Belgium is still a very successful, vibrant brand in our world today. I'm guessing most of you are from Colorado here, and thereby you know New Belgium beer. um, so I also learned a lot about just financial health and spreadsheets, mostly just reading spreadsheets and what that language is, marketing strategies, and then also how to work on difficult things while still taking care of the people in an organization. So in 2019, New Belgium sold to Lion Kieran, and our board of directors was dissolved. And so at that time, I moved full-time into the director role for Mighty Arrow Family Foundation. So today, Casey asked if I would talk a bit about just why boards were important to nonprofit organizations, and why some of our smaller watershed groups around the state of Colorado might be wrestling with just having the proper support systems as they work on their own business plans. I do want to say I am not a consultant that does this professionally. I am just a person who has a lot of experience in this realm. Locally, I'm currently the board chair for CPRW, Coalition for the Poudre River Watershed, a small watershed group up in Fort Collins. Nationally, I'm on the board of American Rivers. Um, I'm on a quasi-governmental board, which is the Larimer County Planning Commission. And then I'm on a steering committee for a funder member group, a member affinity group. And those are all very different boards and different functions. And at the same time, they're all very much the same when it comes to certain types of engagement. And so I guess I want to frame a little bit more. I'll probably spend more of my conversation today talking about working with the smaller watershed organizations and what I've learned from them. As I mentioned, Mighty Arrow, we tend to fund smaller orgs. And so because of that, we've learned a lot about what those groups are really challenged with around the state of Colorado. So oftentimes our small watershed coalitions are started because of fires and floods in their own backyards. And they get started up with FEMA funding or DOLA funding. And once that runs out, especially some of these organizations in smaller rural communities around Colorado, they don't really have the community base to draw fundraising from. And so they're really struggling to keep their doors open. And then a lot of times their boards are formed based on who was in the room during the emergency. Sometimes these are experienced professionals, and sometimes they're just private landowners and community members that maybe aren't there because they have any business experience, but they're there because they care and they were impacted and they want to participate. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I feel like getting your board to a more robust place is something that can be learned along the way. So I guess since we're in the subject of water, and we all probably have an appreciation for rivers here, I guess I wanted to point to the dry suit as your piece of equipment that you might use on a river that gives you confidence. So if you're out there running rapids, we stop and we scout a situation. But if it's cold and it's going to be rowdy, you're probably going to put on a dry suit. And what does that dry suit do? But it gives you that confidence to kind of lean into those waves when they come. And I really feel like your board is like your dry suit, because it's the thing that's supposed to provide you this support, give you this confidence to get out there and do the work that you want. So what are the characteristics of those ideal board members? Again, this is my personal opinion. This is not scientifically grounded. But I really feel like there's certain things that can't be taught when it comes to leadership, and that is integrity, conviction, and courage. I think those are skills that people have inside them. But I do think everything else you can teach someone. And so some of the key skill sets that I find in board members that are generating a lot of value is that they're engaged and they're curious. They bring unique backgrounds, and then they understand their responsibility. And then I think there's bonus points if it's someone who is inspiring to you as the executive director. That's some advice that I often give to our executive directors, is that how do you also look for people that inspire and challenge you, that you can put on your board and in your wheel. So by being engaged and curious, I think part of teaching that is really encouraging questions. Again, some of these community boards, some of these board members, they're not actually coming from that business background. And I have witnessed a lot of just tentative presence in boardrooms where people are afraid to speak up, afraid to ask questions. And I really feel like your board chairs or your executive directors really need to feel empowered to draw people out and to teach people that it's okay to speak, it's okay to ask questions and be curious, and creating that safe space. I think unique perspectives are important. Building a board that has a various skill set and backgrounds, and that can take all sorts of forms. And so one example with CPRW is we created a board matrix where we kind of listed out every single skill set or technical background that we wanted to incorporate into our board wisdom. And then we plugged in where our board members were on those different skill sets and then looked at where our gaps were. And that's what we use for our recruiting committee to go out there and figure out who we want to go target. Now, the board matrix, the list of things we're looking for, is a lot longer than we have board seats for. And so we won't always be able to fill all of them, but I feel like it's very important to call them out. And for CPRW, the examples there is the business and financial acumen, fundraising or funder backgrounds, technical, so Forest Service, water researcher, educational, municipal communication specialists. Casey, this might be a placeholder for a future workshop. I always walk away from conversations with nonprofits and say, you need a marketing director. Research, recreation, diversity, indigenous perspectives, policy, landowners, and the ag sector within some of our water coalitions is important to represent. Responsibility, I think this is also where education can come in, is teaching your board what they are actually responsible for. I think sometimes board members don't actually know what fiscal responsibility means and what they're supposed to be looking out for, and especially if there is a gap between their own understanding of the language around financial spreadsheets and bookkeeping. And so how do you help teach your board members and bring them along? We've done some things like brought in our bookkeeper and our accountant into board meetings a year to talk through the financials and help some of those board members just learn the language along the way that's given them the confidence. We bring in our auditor every year, and our auditor really talks us through what those metrics are that they look at for healthy financials within a nonprofit. And then we've also brought in other nonprofit governance experts as consultants to just do some board governance 101 with us, to really make sure that we all understand what our responsibility is and where the line is between us as board members and the executive director and staff as their responsibilities. Some other things to engage board members that we've done is committees. Now, on big boards, like my experience with American Rivers, I think there's like 10 different committees, each with 10 people on them. It's a very large board. But for smaller organizations, we've really found that working on fundraising, compensation and executive committees, and then recruiting committees have been sort of the key basics that we need to make sure that we are working on from a small, scrappy group. Let's see. What else should I cover, Casey? Anything else there that I'm missing? So some other examples from that I'm thinking of from the local engagement. Our board with CPRW, we were really looking for someone to build some more business and financial acumen into the board. And we're kind of struggling to go recruit people within the community. So we thought about our local community foundation, which actually ended up being a really fun way to engage them in a more meaningful way. Was we reached out and we said, hey, you are connected to the business community. Is there anything, could you put out a notice to your community and say that we're looking for a new board member that has more of this business background? And their chief engagement officer actually raised her hand and said, well, I want to be on your board. And it was a really interesting way for us to get our foot in the door with a bigger connection to the community by working with the community foundation more from a technical expertise need, more so than a funding need. But the funding came along with it, which is always an added bonus. Um, yeah, so we've also worked really hard to engage municipal interests on the boards, and along with that comes county commissioners, city officials that also have started to show up to a lot of our events and engage more in the work that we do, to the point now that CPRW is partnering with Larimer County on a very large um, watershed wildfire resilience project that's coming up in the next few years. And so I really feel like that collaboration came quite a bit from the engagement that they have on our board of directors as well. Yeah, so maybe, yeah, question? Well, I would say we created this by writing it into our board bylaws. And so when CPRW was formed, again, it was formed out of disaster. And so who were the people in the room that cared about that recovery? The municipality was the one whose water supply was threatened by that particular disaster. And so when that coalition was formed, they actually wrote into the bylaws that there would be 3 reserve seats. And those reserve seats could be selected by the municipal partners that were in the watershed. Now, part of the maybe this is a little bit magical, we also wrote in that they have to pay for those board seats. And so that created some general operating funds that kind of were just this foundation of funding for the baseline operations of the organization, but it allowed those municipalities to always be engaged in the conversation and in the work. And another part of the board bylaws was that we also said that the community at large members always would hold the majority of board seats. So we also couldn't be an organization that the municipal parties could come in and completely dictate what the organization worked on. It still had to hold a majority interest for the community's values.
The comment about engagement with municipalities, a reference that I would make is to the Cherry Creek Stewardship Partners. This is we never incorporated. We have used a fiscal agent, but there's this magic of the invoice, and we have created an opportunity for counties and municipalities that have nexus to Cherry Creek to support our outreach efforts, and they have a budget. And so, you do get to know some of the staff and some of the folks, and invite them to your events and ask for their support. Send them an invoice. It's pretty neat.